a voice like this, because good poetry is meant to be spoken. Hello, and welcome to A Voice Like This. I'm Phil Rowe. Today's poems are a little less reflective and a little more rambunctious. A ride through nonsense, rhythm, and the curious corners of childhood imagination. There's something wonderfully freeing about poems that don't need to explain themselves. They just are. They rattle, they gallop, they bounce with sounds and half-meanings that somehow speak to something deeper, or maybe just make us smile. We begin with Robert Louis Stevenson's Windy Nights. This one has stayed with me since childhood. A dark and dashing gallop through the storm. It's short, sharp, and slightly spooky. The kind of thing you might half remember from childhood and still feel on blustery evenings. So here's Windy Nights by Robert Louis Stevenson. Whenever the moon and stars are set, whenever the wind is high, all night long in the dark and wet, a man goes riding by. Late in the night when the fires are out, why does he gallop and gallop about? Whenever the trees are crying aloud and ships are tossed at sea, by on the highway, low and loud, by at the gallop goes he. By at the gallop he goes, and then by he comes back at the gallop again. From moonlit gallops to green-headed suns and cranberry tarts, we take a cheerful turn into the gloriously absurd with Edward Lear now. First published in 1871, this is nonsense verse at its finest. A poem that celebrates risk, imagination, and the joy of doing something entirely unreasonable just because you can. There's a little bit of wisdom in there, I think. Here's The Jumblies by Edward Lear. They went to sea in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they went to sea. In spite of all their friends could say, on a winter's morn on a stormy day, in a sieve they went to sea. And when the sieve turned round, and everyone cried, "You'll all be drowned!" they called aloud, "Our sieve ain't big, but we don't care a button, we don't care a fig. In a sieve we'll go to sea." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. They sailed away in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they sailed so fast, with only a beautiful pea-green veil tied with a riband by way of a sail to a small tobacco pipe mast. And everyone said who saw them go, "Oh, won't they be soon upset, you know, for the sky is dark and the voyage is long, and happen what may, it's extremely wrong in a sieve to sail so fast." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. The water it soon came in, it did. The water it soon came in. So to keep them dry, they wrapped their feet in a pinky paper all folded neat, and they fastened it down with a pin. And they passed the night in a crockery jar, and each of them said, "How wise we are! Though the sky be dark and the voyage be long, yet we never can think we were rash or wrong, while round in our sieve we spin." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. And all night long they sailed away, and when the sun went down, they whistled and warbled a moony song to the echoing sound of a coppery gong in the shade of the mountains brown. "Oh, Timballo, how happy we are when we live in a sieve and a crockery jar, and all night long in the moonlight pale we sail away with a pea-green sail in the shade of the mountains brown." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. They sailed to the western sea, they did, to a land all covered with trees. And they bought an owl, and a useful cart, and a pound of rice, and a cranberry tart, and a hive of silvery bees. And they bought a pig, and some green jackdaws, and a lovely monkey with lollipop paws, and 40 bottles of ringbow ree, and no end of Stilton cheese. Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. And in 20 years they all came back, in 20 years or more, and everyone said, "How tall they've grown!" For they've been to the lakes and the torrible zone, and the hills of the Chankly Bore. And they drank their health and gave them a feast of dumplings made of beautiful yeast. And everyone said, "If we only live, we too will go to sea in a sieve, to the hills of the Chankly Bore." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. Sometimes poetry takes us deep into our feelings. Sometimes it takes us sideways into rhythm, mischief, and curious little adventures. Today's poems remind us that meaning isn't always the point. Sometimes the joy is in the rattle and the rhyme. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this little detour, do share it with someone else who might need a smile today. And I'll be back soon with more poetry, light or dark, loud or still, but always read with heart. Until then, take care.